Welcome back to our animated blackboard project. Today we're going to be creating our draw on chalk animation using grease pens. If you want to make this blackboard we made in the last tutorial, you can watch that here, or you can download the project file and follow along. To start off, we're going to jump straight into making the grease pencil animation. The first thing I'm going to do is create a new workspace. So I'll press my plus icon here, and under 2D animation, I'll left click 2D animation. Then I'm going to left click this blue Z dot here, so we go into the top view, making sure I'm in object mode. I'll also come down to my material properties with my object selected, and with my blackboard material selected, under base color. This color here represents this animation which we added to our blackboard in the last tutorial. So I'll go ahead and remove that. Now that's done, I want to zoom in to our chalkboard. We're going to be doing our grease pencil in black. I'll press Shift A, then under our grease pencil, I'll left click blank. You can see this has created a keyframe on our timeline. So I'm just going to left click this keyframe and press G to drag it to frame 1. You can see the frame indicated here. If we draw with our grease pencil, you'll see that nothing shows up, and that's because our grease pencil object is behind our blackboard. So to undo that, I'm going to press Ctrl Z, and then I'm going to press Tab to go into object mode. Then with my grease pencil object selected, I'll press G, Z, and I'll pull it up a little bit. I'll press Tab and go back into draw mode. And now when we draw, we can see our grease pencil on top. You can see when we created our grease pencil, it automatically added a keyframe at 85. I'm going to bring this keyframe back to 1. You can see the keyframe indicated here. So I'm going to jump to frame 24, and in draw mode with my grease pencil object selected, I'm going to left click this line object here. I'm going to change my subdivisions to 24. This will keep this process super simple and quick for us. Then I'm going to left click and drag to create our line. Around here should do nicely. Then once you've done that, you just need to press enter and the line will be saved. If you go back a frame and see a faded line, don't worry, that's normal in the 2D animation editor. This is called an onion skin, which is a preview of the frame to come. Because of the nature for how grease pencil work, I'm going to left click this last frame, making sure I've selected this GP layer, press Ctrl C, and at frame 1, and I'll press Ctrl V on frame 1. Now I'm going to erase these points all the way down using the point setting with the eraser, so there is just one point left. At frame 23, I'll press Ctrl V to paste the keyframe, and I'm just going to remove the first point. Then at frame 22, I'll do the same, Ctrl V, and I'll remove 2 points. Frame 21, I'll do the same, and this time 3 points. And I'm just going to continue the process from here. I'll speed up the video for now. Unfortunately, I did make a bit of a small miscalculation, but it's easily fixed. So I'm just going to left click and drag a box to select all these keyframes. Make sure I got my GP layer selected. Press G and move them along 2 frames. Then in key 4, I'm just going to press Ctrl V and continue as usual. Just going down, so it's just a little bit of onion skin. That's a bit too much. There. And I'll continue on. And there we go. Now we have our small animation. Now we just need to render our animation so we can use it in our chalkboard. I'll press File and I'll save. And I'm going to press Tab to go into object mode. Press Shift A and I'm going to add a camera. With my camera selected in the tool panel here, under Item, I'm going to make sure my rotation is set to 0, which it is. So I'm just going to press the camera icon to go into the camera. Then under View, I'll left click Camera to View and I'm just going to zoom out until we're in view. As you can see, our grease pencil isn't lined up. Whilst this isn't too important, if you did want to make it seem how it usually does in this view, you can change the type of the camera to orthographic. Also, I'm going to turn off this auto keying function here, just so it doesn't cause any issues. I'll put this back into perspective. Now what we're going to want to think about is this camera representing our blackboard, so we know roughly where we want our stroke to appear. But there's a bit of a problem, and that's the camera is wider than the blackboard. So to fix that, I'm going to go into my output properties here, and we're going to need to change our resolution. This blackboard we've made here is of a ratio of 3 to 2. So what I'm going to do is change my top resolution to 3000 and my Y resolution to 2000. And now you can see our ratio is the same as the blackboard. If you want to change this down proportionally, to do that, all I would need to do is left click our top resolution here, drag down 1, and now when I turn the resolution down, it does it proportionally. So I'm going to change it down to 1920. By the time you're done, you should have 1920p by 1280p. I'm also going to press the eye icon icon on our cube object, which is our blackboard, and turn it off for the camera as well so it doesn't interfere with rendering. Think of this as inside the borders of the blackboard, and this here being what we want to show on our blackboard. When you're happy with that, we can go ahead and change our world. I'm going to left click the shield here to keep it as a fake user, just in case we need to access this later. I'll press X to remove it, and I'm going to press plus new. I'm going to change the color to completely white, and now we have a plain white background for our stroke. Our animation is 26 frames long, so I'm going to set our end frame to 26. Then in our output properties, I'm going to scroll down, make sure our frame rate's at 24. Now I'll just press this folder icon, and I'm just going to create a new folder and call it Chalk Straight Line 2, since I've already got one called Chalk Straight Line. I'll double click it and press accept, and now all the frames we render will go into that folder. Now all that's done, if you're happy with how your grease pencil is positioned, you should be ready to render. So I'll save, and then I'm just going to press render and then render animation. Just before we render here, I'm going to make sure I'm in Eevee, which is the real-time render engine, and under film I'm going to turn off this transparent we turned on earlier. Now we should be ready to go. I'll press render and then render animation. Now you can see it's just going through all the different frames and rendering the animation. Now it's finished the last frame, I'm just going to press X, and if you were to open your file browser, you'd be able to find the animation you've rendered in frame format. Now I'm going to left click on my world properties and change it back to the first world we made. And now we'll have our nice HDRI back. I'll also, in my render properties, turn back on the transparent again. I'll go back to my layout tab, and in my outlier here, I'm going to turn on my cube again. In fact, we should probably go ahead and label this as blackboard. As for my grease pencil, I'm just going to left click the eye icon and the camera icon. Finally, in my output properties, I'm going to change it to one of my presets. Let's do the HDTV 1080p. Now I'll return it to this proper resolution, 1920 by 1080. I'll hide my camera just now since I don't need it out. Now we can go ahead and open up our new animation. So I'll press open, then in my sequences folder, which is where I saved mine, I'll just press A and I'll press open image. A selects all the images. It says here how many frames there are, which is 26. I'll make sure my cyclic and auto refresh are on, and now I'll go into edit mode just to edit the UV. Press tab, now we're in edit mode and face light mode, which is free on the keyboard. I'll left click this face, and it seems like it's not allowing me to preview one of the images in our image sequence, so I'm going to create a brand new image. In my shader editor, I'll press Shift A, then under texture, I'll left click image texture. I'll press plus new, and I'm going to make my width 1920 by 1280 and press OK. And that'll be an image with that 3:2 ratio. I'll left click our untitled image, and it seems that we've already got it scaled correctly. You notice if I press A in my UV editor and press S, I can scale this down and I can make it bigger or smaller. Ideally, I maybe should have spent a bit more time choosing something I was more happy with when I was rendering, but for this instance, I'm just going to scale it down like this. Back in my 3D viewport, I'll tab back into object mode, press the space bar, and you can see our animation is working. Now you'll notice when I turn up my factor, things are looking a little bit weird, so I'm going to press Shift A, and I'm going to search for a color ramp, and this should sharpen up the black and the white. I'll change it from linear to constant, and I'll drag the one at the far right closer to the one at the left. And now you can see that's looking a lot better. We can even control how thick or thin our line is to an extent here, but it will only take you so far. The last thing I'm going to do for the chalkboard before I move on to making the actual chalk is adding a quick bevel modifier. So in my modifier panel, I'm going to press add modifier, and I'm going to choose bevel. I'm going to change my segments to 3, and I'll change the amount to 0.01 for now. I'll zoom in and see how that's looking, and maybe I will change this to 0.005. There, that looks a bit better. Now I'll right click and shade auto smooth. Now all that's left to do is to create a quick chalk and line it up with our animation. So I'll press Shift A, then under mesh, I'm going to left click cylinder. I'll change my vertices to 8, so I'm going to keep it nice and small just now. And then I'm going to press tab into edit mode. I'll press 3 on the keyboard, and I'm going to select the top and the bottom face. And then just press X and then faces. Press 2 on the keyboard to enter edge select mode, alt left click, face, and then grid fill, and then I'll do the same on the bottom. Alt left click, face, grid fill. Then with those faces selected, I'll shift select these top 4 faces by pressing 3 on the keyboard to enter face select mode so I can select them easier, and I'll press I to inset them. I'm going to make my bottom one the chalk, so I'm going to press 1 on the keyboard, and I'll select this face here, press O to enable proportional editing, G and Z, and I'll just pull that down. I'll then add modifier, and I'll add a subdivision surface modifier. I'll left click this triangle here so we can see how it's operating a little bit. I'm just going to press G and Z, pull it down a bit more, and I'll press Ctrl R, and I'm going to add a loop cut here. 3 on the keyboard, select these faces. I'll press O to turn on proportional editing, and then S to scale them in a little bit, and 2 on the keyboard, and I'm going to select these outside edges by shift selecting them. G and Z, pull them down. On the top here, I'll press Ctrl R, and I'm going to pull this down just to sharpen it up a little bit. And on top, I'll press Ctrl R, add another loop cut just to sharpen this one up as well. Now I've done that, I'll right click and I'll shade auto smooth. I'll also add another loop cut here as well, just to smooth things out a little bit more. I'll press 1 on the keyboard again, press O, and I'll press G and Z, and maybe pull this down a little bit further. And I'll press 3 on the keyboard to go in face select modes, shift select these 4 faces here, I to inset them, and now we've got a bit more of a point. I'll press S and shift Z to scale it on just the X and Y axis, and since it's looking a little sharp, I might in edit mode press G and Z and just pull up a tiny bit. So I'll press S and scale it all the way down, something like that for now. I'll press R, X, then 180 to flip it 180 degrees, G and Z, and I'll pull this up. I'll need to give my chalk a material, so I'm going to press plus new, and I'm just going to give it a nice rough material, so maybe turn up the roughness to around 0.8 on it, and just leave it like that for now. Over here, next to the magnet, I'm going to left click vertex, change it to closest, and I'm going to press G and Z, and you can just press Control to temporarily enable the magnet mode. And now we've got it lined up with the surface. Once I've done that, I'll press G and Shift Z so it doesn't go up. I'm also going to expand this panel here just by dragging this along. I'm going to go to the top view just so I can line it up accurately. G and Shift Z, and I'll line it up with the start. And I'm going to change my shader editor to the timeline here. Then I'm going to go all the way back to frame 1. I'll then press Ctrl A, apply the scale and rotation. Then I'll press I, and I'll choose location and rotation. Then at frame 26, we're going to want to pull it to the other end. So I'll press G and X and move it along to around there, and then I'll press I and then location and rotation. Finally, I'll press A to select all the frames here and change my interpolation mode to linear. Now you can see it's lined up with our animation perfectly, and no matter where we go, it's perfectly lined up. And yeah, there we have it. Thank you so much for watching this tutorial. If you did enjoy it and found it useful, please make sure to like the video and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. Also, if you know anyone who'd benefit from these videos, a share would be greatly appreciated. With that, I'd like to thank you again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.